What's going on in the Atlanta real estate market? What's going on with home values? Where are the best schools? Cleve has all the answers for you. Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST. Now, here's Cleve Gaddis.
You're listening to the Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST. If you need to reach us, Gaddis Partners Remax Center, you can call 770-497-0000, or you can go to gogaddis.com. That's GOGADDIS.com. One more time, GOGADDIS.com. We have a special guest on the line with us. He is a sponsor of the Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show, and his name is Joe O'Kelly with O'Kelly and Sorahan. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thank you, Cleve. Enjoy being with you.
My gosh, you got a standing ovation.
You got to give me one of those in my office sometime.
We'll do it. In fact, Joe, we'll send you a copy of this segment when it's all said and done, and you can just play this for people in your office, and they will know you got a standing ovation. Hey, we want to talk about the know before you owe rules, or the new TRID rules. By the way, what's the difference in TRID and know before you owe rules? Are they the same thing? What is it? What's the difference?
They're the same thing. It's combining the truth in lending, the good faith estimate, and the settlement statement all together in one document called the closing disclosure form.
Interesting. So let me set this up just a little bit. One of the things that the federal government thought as we entered the housing crisis in 2008 was that there was a big gap between what lenders said the charges were going to be and what the terms would be in terms of interest rates and prepayment penalties and stuff like that at closing and what they actually were. So they made changes in 2008 or 2009. They added a really, I think, a beneficial third page to the closing statement, which actually sort of settles everything up. Here's what the lender said the charges were going to be. Here's what the charges actually are. So a borrower has full information before they go into the closing attorney's office right here in Georgia to sign the paperwork. So what changes are they going to make now? What are they doing to improve it even further from what they did in 2008 or 2009?
I think they're pretty much the same thing as far as the changes that you're talking about.
Okay.
When they would be different, there would be lender cures, is what they call them.
So if a lender
made a mistake,
okay.
they would make that.
So if a lender says, "Hey, it's going to cost you $1,000 for this," and it turns out to cost $1,300, depending upon the type of charge, the lender might have to eat it, or the lender might have to redisclose everything and give you 3 days. Basically, you could change your mind if you wanted to, right?
Right. So all of that was in place, and I don't know that they're changing that much with this new form, but what they're changing is how the form is going to look, and they're going to make sure that it's in the hands of the borrower 3 days before you actually sit down and sign, what they call consummation.
Which is interesting. So who's going to drive that process? So we've had something in place. I mean, generally, Georgia's supposed to be a wet state, meaning all the money's supposed to be there and ready to close and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that anybody's followed that rule for years and years. But generally, the documents are supposed to be prepared a day or two before closing. Unfortunately, I think with the volume lenders have, they tend to prepare them at the last minute, really too often. So how are the changes going to work from the lender and closing attorney's perspective? And then what should a borrower expect the benefit of all this to be?
I think that it's always been the goal to get the instructions out, the HUD's prepared, the settlement statement's prepared, and send them to the borrower 3 days ahead of time.
Right.
But because of the volume, things wouldn't happen that quickly, and so this basically makes it mandatory that all of that has to happen and be in the borrower's hands 3 days ahead of time.
Right. Now, all of the documents, Joe, don't have to be there. Like, for example, the note they'll sign, the security deed, stuff like that. All those documents don't have to be there. It's just sort of the main summary documents. Is that right?
That's correct. It's silent on that. And so, they're really talking about this one 5-page form where you see the truth in lending and the good faith estimate compared against the numbers, the settlement statement, basically the cash to close, and it outlines what the expenses are going to be. So it's silent on whether or not the packages have to be delivered, meaning the note, security deed, and all the forms you would normally sign. I would think they're going to try to get those out, and those will be sent to the borrowers, but that hasn't been talked about a lot.
And a lot of times borrowers get really nervous about the note and the security deed. Generally, those notes and security deeds, if it's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or an FHA or VA loan, I mean, they're generally all the same. And really what a borrower needs to do is just make sure that their information and the property address and the interest rate and all that kind of stuff is correct on those forms anyway. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, they're very standard forms. They're not going to be changed at closing. It's basically just giving you a summary, but you will see that summary, the exact terms that you're going to see on a note. You'll see that summary in this closing disclosure form.
Which I think is really neat because it'll say, hey, here's your interest rate. Here's what your payment is going to be, just principal and interest. Here's what your payment is going to be with taxes and insurance. Here's whether or not there can be a prepayment penalty. Here's whether or not your interest rate or your payments can go up over time, whether or not you could create negative equity. In other words, is this a loan that lets you pay less than the amount owed, so your loan balance would be going up? And all of that is very clear on the forms today. Do you agree?
I agree, and it'll be, you'll see the term. I mean, you'll literally see everything, and then when you sign the documents, they'll just marry up to what the closing disclosure form says.
Or we certainly hope that they will marry up, right? So listen, real quickly, O'Kelly and Sorahan is our preferred closing firm. They're a first full-service law firm with 15 offices throughout Metro Atlanta. They specialize in residential real estate closings, including home purchases, refinance closings, corporate relocation, and real estate contract review and title insurance matters. They are our preferred closing attorney. They can be reached by calling 770-497-1880. Again, 770-497-1880. Joe, we've got about 60 seconds left in the segment here. Tell us, give us your observations on what's going on in the market. How are you finding closing volume holding up throughout the year? Just any thoughts you have.
You know, Cleve, it's surprising. It stayed up strong the whole year. It started earlier this year than I would have thought it would have. It started in the middle of March. And it's been strong ever since, and I thought we would fall toward the end of the summer, and it still hasn't. So I'm optimistic. I'm excited. I think that all y'all are out there doing a good job. The inventory looks like it's going up a little bit. So, you know, we're thinking it's full steam ahead. We may have some hiccups while we adjust to this new format, you know, the closing forms, but once everybody gets used to it, it's actually going to be really good for the consumer.
Yeah, which is really what it's all about anyway, is making sure that buyers and sellers are as educated and aware, because one of the things the government said was, hey, listen, a lot of these people were duped into these loans. They didn't understand the circumstances. And I'll tell you, I've said at some closings where you had a borrower that was really getting the shaft from everybody involved, and it was almost painful to watch. I was never representing them because I'm afraid I'd have pulled out a bat, and we'd have had to go after it in those situations.
You're very good at representing your people.
Joe, thank you very much for taking time to join us.
This is Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST.